Good morning, everybody. John Spielke here with Ankash Honda, Adam Rappaport, giving you Gen AI news, rating it essential, important, or optional, putting thoughts in your head and time in your day. So don't forget, we have all these articles available at gaiinsights.com/articles. And if you're on YouTube, please subscribe and like. And we've got interesting things today, everything from a big push by the Trump administration to make the U.S. more competitive in AI, all the way through an incredibly performant Chinese model that just got released. So, Ankash, if you could give us the first article, please.
Sure, John. Coming right up. Okay, the first one that we have for today comes from the Wall Street Journal, and it talks about the Trump administration's pledge to stimulate AI use and exports.
Yeah, what do you think of this, Adam?
I don't know. It seemed like maybe a useful reiteration of a lot of what was already pretty much the expected policy to me. Very much in favor of exports, deregulation, use of federal lands, sort of gutting the environment, and which is interesting. Also gutting the whole the woke agenda. And striking that sort of stuff from the regulation. It was interesting to see, but very much in line with how Trump and his administration have already been approaching these things. So there wasn't a lot that's super new that I think is relevant for the AI leader. It might be important to be aware that this trend is continuing, but there is a lot to it though that's worth getting across to understand the bigger picture, I think.
Yes. Hey, listen, good to see you. We're just starting in on the Trump administration's new thing. So where'd you end up rating it in?
This one I ended up rating it as important because it's something that obviously has a lot of impact for many of the AI leaders. For example, anybody who's doing infrastructure or things like that. But really, it's I don't know if it's essential. I don't know where you guys came out on it. It's definitely big. It's going to be happening, but in terms of what is going to be done this year, I think the AI leader probably needs to wait until some of these things get more specified and see if what truly has funding behind it.
Yeah, I was leaning more toward essential, just not because that much new news, but in the Wall Street Journal, it's going to get a wider, wider readership. I mean, these are really material changes. I mean, if you read the more comprehensive documents, as Adam was saying, this is a combination of policy around DEI, there's funding, there's deregulation, there's pushing back on state-based regulation, there's environmental protection, loosening, the regulations there. We're working with a couple folks on the energy side of this, and the scale. Well, I can mention this one, Fermi America. They want to put in 13 gigawatts of behind-the-meter power, deregulated power, and a huge push on nukes. There's a small nuclear reactor that the Chinese have been implementing like crazy, and the U.S. hasn't. And so it's actually designed by Westinghouse, and so there's a real push for that particular thing. The 13 gigs they want to put in on top of the Permian Basin in West Texas are 9 gigs of nukes, 9 gigs of gas. 6 gigs of nukes, 6 gigs of gas, and 1 gig of solar. So this is a real push. So I don't know, Ankash, where are you on this?
I was essential on this one, primarily because for the last 1.5 years, we have seen a lot of AI policies coming out of various states, right? So that was confusing. So having this AI action plan, I think that provides a more clear picture. And to follow up with the Pennsylvania event, where a lot of big sort of investment commitments were made, I think this is a good follow up to that. And primarily there's a focus on open weight, open source models in there as well. So I think which will really help us expand the scope of models outside US and to broader geographies as well.
All righty. All right, I'm going to give this baby an essential. Next, Ankaj, on to GitHub Spark.
Yes. So the next one comes from Microsoft and GitHub, and they have launched Spark.
Yeah, just before I head in there, Vivek was just saying that the CEO of NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, was given the highest praise to Trump. Yeah, this is, I think this is policy written by Silicon Valley that's just getting, as one person in the article mentioned, they just slapped the White House on top of it. I think, David Sachs, I'm sure, had a lot to do with it.
That's what they did with Stargate as well. That's what I'm saying. Like this is more of the same, right? With Trump just sort of taking what everyone's doing and waving his flag on top of it.
Yeah, well, let's say policy geniuses aren't the first two words that come to mind when you look at his cabinet and people working directly for him. Anyway, okay. What do you think, Lucinda, on the GitHub Spark?
GitHub Spark. So I actually, I'm leaning towards essential, but I could go important. So kind of between the two. Reason why is because this is really built for rapid prototyping and MVPs. And I do feel like if you're going to be, discovering use cases and you just want very fast feedback and maybe even have some of your subject matter experts be able to convert natural language prompts into a prototype, that could really accelerate how well you can imply or kind of embed generative AI into workflows and processes. So again, it's also got deep GitHub ecosystem integration. It's also got some governance behind it in the sense that there's always human in the loop. It does only support a couple of languages, React and TypeScript, and it does generate browser-based apps. It's not, mobile yet or native apps, etc. And it is available, although I was not able to get it for Copilot Pro users. So I also was asking, okay, so what's the difference between GitHub Spark and OpenAI GPTs? And GPTs are just kind of very narrow. This can be a much broader, full stack type of code. It's really geared for software developers. So I think that for anybody who's building prototypes, this is essential. Otherwise, at least important because of the capabilities it now gives your developers.
All right. Case for essential or important. What do you think here, Adam?
I could go important. I think part of what downgrades it for me, precisely to your point, Lucinda, is that it's only available for Pro Plus users at this point. So this is you have to start to ask, is this going to be worth spending an extra $40 a month on top of what people are already spending to get this capability when a lot of it, maybe not this deeply integrated into GitHub, is already there? I think if for developers, yes, but it almost seems like this is targeting more of the vibe coders and the Replit competition and Cursor and those sorts of things, and that this is trying to actually more, almost like Copilot Studio from Microsoft, create that environment where anyone can make these little things, and to then expect people to pony up like they're a GitHub developer in terms of their investment. It just feels like a bit of a mismatch to me. And the fact that not many people can even use it at this point, I was a little bit more wait and see if I guess the spark ignites before going as far as you did in terms of my enthusiasm. But so I could support important, though. You make some really good points about what it's unlocking.
Yeah, it's interesting. Ram and Vivek are saying this, important, essential. Ashish points out incredibly crowded market already. We had the Learning Lab on Lovable and so forth.
Yeah.
30,
Yeah, that was my feeling. Yeah, that's a good point.
Where are you on, Kaj? Important, essential, optional?
John, I was between important and essential for this one, but as to Ashish's point, it's a very crowded market right now, and we are yet to see the outcomes of or from GitHub Spark, right? How it performs. So maybe important at this point.
All right. I'm going to go for important because it's a crowded market, not completely. I mean, super important topic. Well, that's interesting. The Vivek notes that you're much more likely to have the corporate availability because of policy and security issues with GitHub and so forth. Yeah, I hear you. I'm still going to give it important because access isn't that broad and competitive market. All right. Next, Ankush.
Okay, the next one is a case study which comes from Anthropic and talks about how Gradient Labs transforms financial services customer support with Claude.
All right. Interesting new thing here. What do you think, Ankush?
So John, I was between optional and important for this one. So basically, Gradient Labs, they are providing an AI platform which solves the customer support issues for financial services firms. They have shown sort of good impact here. So 80-90% resolution rates, customer satisfaction outcomes are high as 98%. And then they talk about how they have used Claude in here. So not a lot of detail, but impact is there. They have talked about how they are using Claude. So that's why I was just between optional and important for this. But it highlights another sort of point for me where a lot of developers are using Claude code a lot, and they are using it more as an AI agent. And they are of the view that it's better than the ChatGPT agent. And if Claude just or Anthropic just rebrands it as a Claude agent, it will surpass all sort of adoption expectations.
All right. So you land on important on this or optional?
Important, John.
Important. All right. Got a case for important. What do you think, Lucinda?
I'm also with important for all the reasons that Ankush said. Also, these numbers of 90-ish% are very much in line with what we heard from Jerry, and also Maven AGI, which is focused on customer service chatbots powered by AI. I do think this is, obviously one of the classic use cases in addition to software development, customer service, and, aiding with taking care of those queries. It's interesting that they have an outcome-based pricing model, which might be a little bit of a red flag or something difficult for an AI leader to be able to sell to their management. And that also it is a startup, so they only have like a certain amount of revenue with a small team. And so, yeah, so those might be some risk factors for the AI leader in thinking about going to Gradient.
All right, Adam, where are you on this?
I was between optional and important, but probably leaning towards optional. It is a fairly common use case. They don't give very much detail that could actually be useful in how to implement or adopt this use case yourself or into your organization. And there's probably no shortage of use cases that demonstrate something similar to this in terms of capability out there. Specifically, maybe not with Claude. And Ankush makes a great point about how prevalent Claude is right now with the adoption and being used as an agent with Claude Code. But I was probably overall, it's just a little too generalized and doesn't give enough actual specific detail of how it was done for me.
Yeah, that's where I was. I was great, great domain, as you say, lots of examples. I didn't see anything in there really in terms of economic impact. There was transaction impact, but I didn't see them translated into dollars. All right, we're going to give this baby an optional. Interesting, a strong optional, but optional it is. Ankush next.
Okay, the next one comes from Salesforce and talks about Promptomatics, which is an automatic prompt optimization framework for large language models.
Yeah, Lucinda, you're, in the middle of this every day. What do you think?
Yeah, well, actually, I came out for optional about this. I felt like this is a very good, academic paper. But that I also feel like, the large language models are already doing this inside under the hood. And I also know that, like, for custom GPT.ai, Alden's company, I know that's a key part of his thing from the very beginning was, okay, users put in all sorts of, terse or cryptic prompts. How can, those things need to be reworked so that you can do that. So I think it also really lacks open source code or data sets or deployment instructions, et cetera. And that even it's going to have limited longevity, right? I mean, if you're just drafting behind the big boys, these things are being incorporated into the models. There also aren't really numbers for ROI, et cetera. So for that reason, I think it's optional.
QC name, what'd you think?
So I think I was optional as well. I was thinking even how we hear all the conversations trending now towards this idea of context engineering and the actual prompt engineering being a component of it. And I think there's probably a place for what they're doing with this promptomatics in terms of fitting into a larger picture and an architecture, and it's something that people will have use for and be able to plug in possibly as sort of like they'll specialize in that component of it. Like you said, Lucinda, we certainly know people who have done this themselves quite effectively, and a lot of models are doing that under the hood now as well. I was optional on the news, but I can also envision it where people be like, well, we'll just use this as our optimization engine, and they'll just sort of plug that into a larger architecture.
Okay.
Optional for me, John.
All right. Optional it is. Next.
Okay, the next one comes from Anthropic and talks about building and evaluating alignment auditing agents.
Yeah, fascinating thing here. Putting some misalignment in a model and then, using that as part of a test, with other, models interrogating it. Let's see. Was this Adam? Yes.
Yes, sir. I want to know who's auditing the auditing agents, because we need to make sure they're properly aligned. But yeah, it's super fascinating, and we continue to applaud Anthropic and their thought leadership around the importance of alignment and doing the research and publishing the findings on these things. And this has to do with their training of Claude 4 Opus, their largest version of that model, and what they did internally and now are sharing, which we see them having done before, sort of their findings and the thought leadership behind their practice of discovery, doing the auditing and evaluating of their own model as they were training it in terms of the alignment of it. So it's some pretty cool research. May be important because it does shed a lot of really good light onto some of the major challenges around alignment, which is a decent read for the understanding of that in the bigger picture, but possibly optional because it is just kind of specific to what they've done here. I don't know. I was kind of on the fence.
Lucinda, where are you on this?
It's very similar. Fence of optional and important. First of all, I'm really glad that Anthropic is doing work like this and publishing it, even when it's not, like they only had I think 10 to 42% detection, et cetera. I mean, we're able to kind of watch along as they are doing these things. So I'm very grateful that Anthropic is doing this sort of research. Again, but for the AI leader, it's like, this is actually good to know, good to kind of, keep in the background of what you're doing. But, can you implement it or act on it at this point in time? Maybe not. I'm glad that they're doing it. And I'm looking forward to how this evolves and what they do next in this area.
Yeah, important area. Akash.
Important area, John, optional use.
Yeah, fascinating. I do agree. Anthropic seems to be willing to make the investment, and this is very labor intensive for some of their best talent. So it's a non-trivial investment for them. but optional news. Okay, optional.
Well, what came to mind, Lucinda, was transparency, right? To your point, like they aren't necessarily looking the best based on what they're sharing, but they're sharing it nonetheless. Yeah, it's really plausible.
Yeah, I mean, the true. You got a feeling of true openness here. Interesting. The part of the Trump administration things was to really cut, to rescind a bunch of the executive orders from Biden around making sure that the model companies are not held accountable for any harm that might come from their models. So it's the Wild West. Okay. Next and last, Akash.
Okay, the last one that we have for today comes from VentureBeat and talks about Quen 3 Coder 480B, a 35 billion instruct model, and it might be the best coding model yet.
Yeah, amazing. I'm reminded of, I think it was yesterday we had the article that talked about how there's kind of subliminal knowledge inside these models that isn't explicit, and a very interesting dimension of the Chinese. There's obviously, I was also talking to some folks in national security yesterday, and obviously a huge emphasis by the Chinese to try to dominate AI, or at least be the leader. What do you think here, Akash?
So John, I was important on this. So basically it's a 480 billion parameter model, 35 billion active per query. It has 8 active experts out of 160, then 256K token window. It's Apache 2.0 license, so anybody can use it, train it, fine tune it. It also has integrations with Claude, Klein, and you can run it on Olama and a host of other portals. It has great performance on all the benchmarks, so similar to Sonnet and GPT-4o. So I think it's available for free, and it does a good job on all the sort of benchmarks that are out there. So important for me.
All right, we have a vote for important. What do you think, Lucinda?
I agree with important for all of the reasons that Ankash mentioned. It's actually so interesting that for the active part that's being used in this model, that it's so much smaller than Claude Opus, right? But it's getting pretty much the same sort of, or maybe even slightly better performance on coding. So I think that's very interesting, and AI leaders should be keeping track of this. Some limitations are, I do think, Ankash, you said it could be on Olama, but I was just wondering what the operational complexity might be for the full-sized model with 480 billion parameters. And otherwise, I do think, it would, in order to use an open source one like this, you have to do a little bit more care and feeding of your own models than if you are doing it, as a cloud provided type capability. There's some question about the 2-bit compression. Will that really work reliably over time? So more testing needed.
All right. Adam, where are you?
I'm going to channel my inner Paul. This is a crowded space, and the latest thing that comes out is always going to be the best. And there was a lot already out there. I think this isn't something an AI leader needs to know. Anyone who needs to know this is going to be following this part of the market pretty closely. It's nothing really innovative or earth-shattering. We've seen these mixture of experts where you have 480 billion parameters with only 30 something lit up at a time. They're the latest ones to release it, using everything we kind of know now how to do best. And so it's going to be a little bit better than what's already out there. And probably the people who need to know it are already going to find it out. But our AI leader just has no use for this detail.
Interesting, isn't it? When you talk about it these are algorithmic innovations that 12 months ago didn't exist. And I was like, yeah, of course.
But they did 3 and 6 months ago, and they're not the first, right? They're just doing it best because they did it last.
Yep. Ankash, where are you on this?
I was important, John, so I introduced this one, right?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No one left but you, John, to weigh in.
Just for me, yeah, I was more on important. It's such a high performing model. I agree with you in general for these announcements, but this one, is very, very strong. The use of open source, that as we see people, a bunch of our customers and research sites are really deploying, significant AI, scale, and especially as you put agents in, like one of the vendors that we're working with, they own the demand risk. So as the client uses more and more, they have to, they give them a fixed price, and they spend a ton of their time engineering the cost and use of models and so forth, because as they introduce agents, so for example, they were supporting call centers, and the demand profile is like early morning, 8 or so to about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then they put in agents that interrogate Power BI, interfaces to help analyze the stuff. And they just saw the afternoon just, exploded in terms of token use as the executives began to, use this decision support tool. The open models are model choice, and open models are a big part of how they're managing that cost. So I was going to give it an important because of the token explosion. So let's go important on that one. All right. Guys, if you use the tote board, hey, we've got some fantastic stuff happening Monday in in our learning lab. There's one of the most popular car sites is one called Car Gurus out of Boston, and we have Sarah Rich from Car Gurus is going to talk about how they really have made sure that generative AI is just embedded in the entire organization at Car Gurus and driving their productivity and capability. If you really want to understand how to make this real inside a large organization that's growing like topsy, as my grandmother used to say, please join us at 7:30 Eastern time, Eastern U.S. time, and then of course it'll be recorded and such. But Learning Lab on Monday, and our AI show in the morning on Monday as well. Lucinda, any announcements from what you're doing at Ironside or insights for our folks?
Nope. I'm actually really just working on deploying one of the ones that I think I've talked about, the mystery shopper use case before. So I'm working on that one right now. So I'm very excited to be able to implement that.
Well, that's great. Well, if you can, we'd love to have you, share it in the Learning Lab maybe, and let our folks know what you're learning, because your insights are always a wonderful combination of what's really happening practically, as well as what the strategic meaning of it could be. Adam, you said you're super busy down under working on deploying more and more of the Microsoft products. You just want to say 2 seconds on the thing I don't know if you can talk about the thing about the fire thing we were just talking about.
Probably better not to
Okay.
at this point, but yeah, looking at real world solutions and ways you can actually make a difference beyond just sort of summarizing meeting transcripts and figuring out which emails you haven't responded to, which is some cool stuff. Building with Azure AI Foundry and everything that comes with it.
Very exciting. Ankash, any news on your front?
No, John, just we are wrapping up the buyer's guide, and it will be ready for release by next week.
Yes, super important. Our update to our buyer's guide is coming out, and lots of new insights there and trends we're seeing. And it's not just a buyer's guide. There's also trends and predictions in there. All right. So we have 1 essential here, 2 important, and 3 optional. Have a great AI weekend, and feel free to join us in the Learning Lab on Monday. Hope to see you there, and take care, everybody. Great to see you. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Lucinda. Thank you, Ankash. Bye-bye now.
Bye.